I am so glad to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about audience engagement. Unlike the other speakers today, I'm a fairly new speaker. I've only been speaking for about 5 years now, and I'm a very nervous speaker. So doing this today still got me nervous, just like any other presentation. But you have to actually control that nervousness, figure out how to engage your audience. We're going to talk about some of those things, and we'll talk about how I can break the ice straight off the bat and get that audience engagement before things even start. So let's go ahead and get started and show my slide deck if we can. All right, there you go. So I like to actually start out with this on my slide. I can let everybody know why they walked into the room that they're in and make sure they're in the right place. So I do have an introduction slide like this. And if I can get my screen to go forward. There we go. All right, so I like to go ahead and talk a little bit about me, let them know who I am. It kind of sets the tone. We'll talk about setting the tone here shortly, but I give them a little bit of view onto what my credentials are. So when they walk into a room, they can actually see, hey, yeah, this is the right person. She knows what she's talking about. You can see that I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm a VMware expert. I set the tone that I am an expert in what I'm about to talk about. So that's why I have this slide going up here. You can find me at SQL Espresso. It gives them a follow-up method right off the bat. And if they ever actually download my slide deck, it gives them all the information they need to reach me. I also use an agenda. Many people don't use an agenda, but I think it's important as I'm going through this to set an expectation, to let them know what they're about to see. And it actually gives them an opportunity to walk out of the room if they want to see another session. I tend to actually talk at conferences that have several ongoing sessions at the same time. I like to let my audience know that my topic is for them and I want them to learn something. If it's not exactly what they came in for based on my agenda slide, it's okay to go and move to another session. So I absolutely make my agenda available to everybody. And this is a give or take. Magnus may agree, not agree on whether to have an agenda slide. I'm sure I'll find out later. But this is what I like to do. So today we're going to talk about engagement before it starts. And like Magnus said, you have to project yourself as an expert. So we're going to talk about how to make sure you project yourself as an expert and what kind of things you can do to help them believe you are the expert. Then we're going to talk about relating. It's very, very important to be relatable to your audience. You want to make sure you're not a stone figure lecturing in front of them that they can't talk to or intimidated by. You want to just be this casual person that, hey, I'm just having a conversation with them. So that's what we're going to talk about. And then we're going to talk about virtual. Engaging with your audience in a virtual manner is very difficult. Obviously, Magnus before me did a fantastic job, but not everybody is as seasoned as him to do a virtual conference. And right now, with the way the world is, a lot of conferences are going virtual. And it's going to be a big skill set that all of us presenters are going to have to manage and figure out how to do it just to move forward in our speaking time for the next year. And then we're always going to close with a summary. I want to give my audience something to take back and an actionable item. I'm engaging with them to have them do something else after they leave the room and hear me speak. So we'll talk about that as well. Again, like I said, everything happens before your presentation even starts. How many times have you walked into a room, you see the speaker looking at their watch, you see them standing there talking to themselves, kind of going over their presentation, they're pacing back and forth, they are actually nervous, and you can see they're nervous, so there might be tense. You can actually see them just standing there. The room is silent when you walk in and the speaker is just standing there like this. That is not engaging. Setting the tone as soon as the person walks into your room matters. You don't want to stand there and be quiet. Now, Magnus said take a pause and be quiet before you start to speak. Command your audience. Fantastic. But during the 10 or 15 minutes before you're actually going to do your session, when everybody is filing into the room and you're not on a big stage, you're in a classroom, you're in a conference of some sort where you're in a ballroom and not on a stage, it's important not just to stand there quietly waiting for everybody to sit into the room, and then you're saying, okay, let's talk. Meanwhile, everybody is coming in. They're thinking they need to stay quiet, and they're thinking that they can't say anything because they're going to interrupt you or whatever. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to be on your phone either, doing those last minute texts or checking your messages or checking Twitter. It means you're not engaged and ready and prepared to start. And don't stare at your watch. Magnus said that already. He takes his watch off. I don't wear a watch usually when I speak. I actually use a timer just like his. Doing things like that is awkward. It's very, very awkward to walk into a room and sit there where the speaker is quiet, just standing and waiting. They're sitting there, standing with waiting with their arms crossed. Maybe they're moving back and forth. It's just quiet. What do you need to do with your audience as soon as you walk into the room? You connect. You get common ground. You make connections as they walk in. I love to start engaging my audience as they walk in. As they're walking in the door, I say, hey, how are you today? Or I'm starting to talk about my Twitter handle is SQL Espresso. Many people want to know where SQL Espresso came from. So maybe I'm talking about the quad shots of espresso that I took 4 times a day, not even knowing I was doing 4 quad shots a day because I didn't know how to use the machine correctly. That always gets laughs. There's something that you can talk about that engages everybody, whether it's asking them if they enjoyed the sessions that they did prior to coming into your room, or it's talking about how did they find out about the conference. If it's talking about the coffee hasn't kicked into your system yet because you're the first session in the morning and you're dragging and you're laughing about why you're so tired or something, you're connecting and making friends with those people in the audience. Even if it's just 1 or 2 people, you're making that connection. And people who walk into your room in that kind of environment automatically feel comfortable. We're about to have a conversation. Oh man, this person is going to be great. You're setting an expectation and you're actually becoming familiar to them, maybe making friends even before you start. When you do that, you get that immediate connection. They're paying attention to you. They are engaged and they are ready to go. It's not something where you're going to have people falling asleep in your room because they're already engaged with you, became your friends, and they are ready to have that conversation. So connect even before you start your presentation. And like Magnus said, you've got to be the expert. How do you do that? You make them believe. I don't care if you don't know everything. I don't care if you feel like you're talking about a topic that you're just not quite sure you're about to say the right thing. I don't care if it's the wrong thing, but you've got it in your slide deck. You are the expert, and because you said that's what it is, that's what it is. And how do you do that? You have the confidence when you speak. Notice when I'm speaking, I just all of a sudden stood right up. Sat right up, obviously, because I'm at my desk. But I'm standing here in a command, confident that I'm about to tell you everything on this slide is correct because I said so. Right? Now, if I was sitting here completely slunched over, which you probably can't even see me right now, but completely slouched over, or my arms crossed, or my shoulders were saggy, then it looks like, okay, maybe this person doesn't know what they're talking about. So confidence, believe in yourself that you can do it. The confidence will shine through and you automatically become the expert. Tone. Again, if I'm talking in a complete monotone, or I'm really, really quiet, or I have a stutter to my voice to where, you can tell I'm not quite confident in what I'm about to tell you, it actually shows to your audience. Tone makes the whole thing different for how they see you. Speaking with confidence, a stern voice, you believe in yourself, makes a world of difference. When you have that nervous tics that come through, the ums and really and and yeah, and all of those things, it gives the audience a second to pause. And they start to wonder, are they second guessing themselves? Did they forget something? Did they say something wrong? Is there something that I'm missing or they skipped that they're realizing they did? Sometimes people have the nervous tick of ums just normally, and that's okay. There are ways you can practice, and we'll talk about that, to get rid of those things. That comes completely with becoming a seasoned speaker. Everybody starts out with those. I know some speakers that are very seasoned that have been doing it for 10 years and still have those nervous tics. Just remember, if you're going to have the nervous tics, say them with confidence, right? You still become the expert, and just do your best. Try to see what you can do to get rid of it. Did you catch that? I just said, that is my nervous tic, and I just caught it. So it happens to all of us. And watch your posture. Like I said, I'm standing here in my desk chair, trying to do my best to still watch my posture. Standing up there in the middle of the room with a slouching posture, again, makes a huge difference. Do your best. If you're in the middle of your speaking engagement, correct yourself if you find yourself doing it. When you do that, sometimes re-straightening your posture grabs the attention of your audience. It can make a difference. So just watch yourself. Make them believe. You don't have to be right. You don't have to be perfect about what you're saying. Although with practice and with research, you can make sure you're saying the right things, but make them believe, regardless what it is. Practice, 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 practice. For a speaker, whether you're new, whether you're seasoned, a brand new deck, a brand new topic, practice. There's so many things that you need to work on before you go and speak to an audience, or after you've gone and spoken to the audience, come back and make corrections for. Try to record yourself when you do your session, when you're practicing at home. Give your session to family members. Sometimes I've actually given my session to my pets. If a cat is sitting at my desk or something, I might just go and pretend they are an audience member. Do your best. Everybody has coworkers and friends. Maybe you give your session at your office and ask a couple of people, hey, at lunch, can we sit into the conference room? Let me practice my deck with you, and maybe get some feedback. Preparing and practicing is all you can do. I've given sessions, the same sessions over and over again, and it continues to improve. The first time I give a session, it's never perfect. It's never perfect. I always either say something wrong or I miss something every single time. So practice in a mirror. If you can record yourself and listen to it. I hate listening to myself recorded. However, I will struggle through that just so I can see. As you can tell, when I talk fast. I talk really fast. And no matter what I do to pace myself, it always speeds up. That is the biggest feedback that I get all the time. You talk so fast, I can't keep up. It happens. It will always happen, but I continue to try to slow it down. Just now, I slowed myself down, just the tempo, just a little bit, but I try to do that. Engaging with the audience, trying to slow your speed down, watching the audience to see, hey, are they connecting? Are they following me, or am I going too fast? And then slow down. All of that is a skill that gets mastered with practice. Looks like my slide deck doesn't want to prepare. Okay, involve your audience, right? You don't want anybody sleeping in your audience. You want them to actually feel like they are part of the conversation. Now, this is what I do. Doesn't work for everyone, but it's what I do. This slide is present in every single one of my slide decks. Why do I do that? This is usually the second slide that I put up, and I set expectations of engagement with my audience. Now, what do? I tell my audience, hey, this is about you. It's not about me. So let's have a conversation. Let's learn from each other. I don't mind if my audience raises their hands to ask me a question during a slide. I don't mind if they want to share something that can actually help other people in my audience. I want them to stay engaged, to interrupt me. Now, I do caution, like today, we only have 30 minutes. Sometimes I have 50 minutes, sometimes I have an hour, sometimes I have an 8-hour session. I want to make sure me as a speaker controls the flow of those questions. I control my time. A lot of times you can get somebody that actually takes advantage of these presentation rules and likes to have a question with every single slide, and they tend to kind of take over the session. You actually have to master the skill as a speaker on how to actually gauge your time and how to be able to allow for the conversation and the engagement from your audience. I want to make sure, like I said, I want to keep them awake. I want them to know that this presentation is for them. They need to get out of the presentation as much as possible. And how do they do that? engagement, asking me questions, making sure that they understand my content. So this slide, again, is set in the very beginning. It sets the expectation that I'm not here just to lecture you. I'm here to learn with you, to teach you, to show you what you can get from SQL Server, as an example, to help your environment. So this is what I do. It may not work for everybody, but I set the tone right away that engagement is important to me. Now, I need to get them involved. If they are not involved and they're all just sitting there quiet, maybe I have somebody who fell asleep or somebody who's nodding off because of the time of the day or time zone differences, things like that, I take control of the engagement and I ask the questions. So I may say, how many of you guys have ever run into this issue? Show me your hands, and have them raise their hands. And then I say, oh, and I might point to somebody or gesture to somebody and say, oh, really? Why don't you tell me about that? Was that really difficult? How did you overcome that? And I turn the command over to the audience. I pull the engagement out of them and I urge the interactions. Maybe I say, hey, I got this error. And when I got this error, as I'm talking about whatever topic I'm doing, I really struggled to get through this. And I ended up solving the issue by 1, 2, and 3. Did anybody else do it quicker than I was? Can you actually share that with the audience? Or I might look for head gestures. I might say, hey, who has done this or that? And you'll see the audience shake their head. Or you'll have some kind of action from your audience that tells you, yes, they're engaged. Maybe we have an activity we have to do. And I might ask somebody to stand up and demonstrate something. Or I'll do something that says, hey, audience, are you with me? Are you still there? Like right now, hey, maybe you have a comment and you wanted to put it inside the chat. We'll be going back to those later and we'll follow up on some of those questions. There are ways to do it and encourage active listening with your audience if they are not engaged with you automatically. Be relatable. Again, this is something we talked about with tone, as well as your body language. Being relatable means that they're not looking at you to lecture. You're not a professor in which they're sitting in a class, standing there taking notes, and they know they need to be quiet, and it's really, really monotone, and it happened to go back to be the most boring class you've ever been to, and you dread going to hear that professor talk because they have this lecture tone, and they're just like speaking at a blank wall. That's no fun, right? When you're talking with your hands, when you're using inflection in your voice, when you're just having a conversation like you would with a friend, that's the way to do a good presentation. If you watched Magnus earlier, he talked with his hands. He talked to his camera just like this, and he was actually engaged. Regardless, he could see who was on the other side. His voice had the energy, and his voice was saying, yes, I see you. I'm not here to just talk at my camera just because I was told to do that. What fun is that? That is not fun. It's not engaging. Watch your cadence too. Again, that goes with tones. What's cadence? Cadence is the music of your words. It's the tempo of your words. If I'm talking in the same cadence, and it might be really, really fast, really, really slow, or it's just not melody-like, then you're not going to want to listen to it. If you're actually using inflection, if we're talking in different fast, slow, different kinds of tempos, that's the word I'm looking for, different kinds of tempos, it makes your talk more interesting. It's not bland. It's not something you're going to fall asleep to. It really makes it so you're not boring. What to take from this? Don't be boring. Do everything opposite that you've actually encountered when you've gone to that really boring lecture from a professor. Do your best to avoid that. Now, what if it's virtual? If it's virtual, how can you do this? I'm trying my best now to talk to my camera and engage, right? So first, don't look down at your slides, which to me are on my desk. Make sure you're engaged and you're looking at your camera. Your audience may not be in front of you, but they are on the other side of that camera. Or if you're actually just recording your session, maybe you put your kids in the room while you record and really hope that they're silent and don't make any noise so you can actually have some eye contact with somebody. Or maybe you put a mirror Some people put a mirror in the room, so when they're talking, they can actually see themselves and pretend they're talking to somebody else. But when I talked about earlier, I talked about engaging your audience and audience participation. Doing that online can still happen. Always have a moderator. We have a moderator in here today. He can actually go and look at questions and then come back to me. I could pause at any point in time and say, hey, do we have any questions? And let him interject and allow those questions to come through. Always have a moderator. Don't do it without it. And then work with your moderator beforehand. Let them know, hey, I'm actually going to ask you midway if the audience has questions. Can you stop us and see if we can address some of those questions before we move forward? There's things you can do to make sure you're still getting that audience and great engagement. And CSharpCorner does a great job with taking care of that in sessions like this that they do. It's one of the best things about their training sessions that I love. Pause for questions. I haven't done that so far, but I'm going to leave some time after this for some questions, and I will have them kick back over to make sure we get that audience participation that I've been talking about. You can always pause and check for questions, even though you're virtual. I like to do that too if I'm not virtual, especially if you're a speaker and you realize you're going too fast through your slide deck. Take a pause. Use some of your extra time to engage your audience. Take a couple minutes to see who has any questions on what I just covered so far. It slows your pace. It allows engagement with the audience, and you can still do that in a virtual environment. Like I said, speak as though they're in the room, right? Make sure they can see you. They can pretend that they are in a room with you because you've engaged them in that camera. You've actually found a way to make that connection. It's a hard thing to do. It's something, again, within this next year of all these virtual conferences we're going to do. Sooner or later, we're going to master it, but a lot of us are going to fumble through it because it's a new environment for us. So speak as though they're in the room as best you can. It's difficult, as you can tell in these things today. It is a skill that a seasoned speaker will still have to work on as well. Lastly, turn on your camera. Turn on your camera. If you are actually using a system like we are right now called StreamYard, you're able to do what we're doing right now. We have the camera and the slide deck. It is very, very difficult to look at somebody's slide deck only on your screen in a virtual environment and not get distracted by your email, by your Twitter account, by your kids that are in the other room, by whatever thing that you have going on, work, or whatever it is that is commanding the additional screens in your environment. It's hard to keep the engagement. I'm sure many of you right now, besides streaming this live, have something else that's distracted you during these engagements. Putting on a camera reminds you that there's somebody else on the other side of that screen talking to you. It lets them know, hey, there's a person here. Usually when there's a person and they are looking at me through their camera, they get the engagement. They actually say, okay, there's a person, I need to pay attention. I need to respect their time. They're talking to me. That's how it works. For many people that just do webinars that have no camera involved, it is extremely, extremely easy to disengage or to not be able to be an active participant and ask questions or take notes or whatever it is because you've just gotten distracted by whoever's tweeting their favorite dog on Twitter or whatever cute animal that was just tweeted. And then you've lost the whole context of whatever that slide or whatever the thing the person was teaching you. Turn on the camera as a speaker. It engages your audience. It lets them know that you're real. It lets them know that you're there speaking to you. So definitely do that if you get the opportunity. That's all I have at this time, but I'm actually going to kick it over, and I did this on purpose. One, I leave my slide with an action item. You can see it says, get them involved from the start. I want all of you new speakers to make sure you engage your audience before your speaking starts. Before your session starts, engage them as they walk through the door. The number one thing I want you to take away from my deck is an action item to start talking to the people as they walk through the door. Before you get started, it relaxes your nerves. It gets the right tone. It allows you to engage your audience right off the bat. Leaving you with the rest of my contact information, I always let my users know, or my users, see, I'm a technical person, let my audience know they can reach me. Again, I'm relating to them. I'm telling them, hey, reach out after the fact, tweet me, hit me up on my blog, ask me questions. When you leave this room, still engage me. I want to know about you. I want you to learn more from me. This is how you reach me. So I always end with that.